If you're watching this video, your book writing journey is about to begin. Or maybe you're in the middle of the writing journey and you're feeling a little stuck. You are in the right spot. I am here to help you figure out how to get to the end of your book writing journey. Because writing a book is a lot like going on a long road trip, but it's in the dark. And the reality is you can't get to the end of your journey. You can't get to a finished book until you've traveled every single mile along the way. But the writing process can feel a lot of times like you can only see as far as your headlights, and you're not really sure what you need to do next. In this video, I want to light up the road in front of you to map out every part of your journey so you can have more fun and less frustration and feel like you really know what you need to do next in your process. I believe you can write a book. You can write a book, but you need to have the right map to get there. And that's what we're going to do in this video. If you haven't met me, my name's Joe Bunting. I am the founder at The Right Practice. I'm a Wall Street Journal best-selling ghostwriter, and I've written over 15 books. So I have been through this process many, many times, and I want to help you figure out how to navigate this process for your writing. Like any long trip, there are going to be some stops along the way, some milestones that you need to reach along the way. And I have 10 milestones for you that I want to talk about that will help you get to the end of your book. I'm going to share those 10 milestones and then we'll go into detail on each one. So the first stop along the way is to write a one-sentence premise. Stop number 2 is to picture your ideal reader. Stop 3 is to write a simple outline. Stop number 4 is to write one chapter at a time until you finish your first draft. Stop 5 is to read through your book without editing. Stop number 6 is to rewrite, focusing on structure until you finish your second draft. Stop 7 is to get feedback from a content editor and a critique group. Stop number 8 is to rewrite, focusing on proofreading until you finish your third draft. Stop number 9 is to get beta readers and a copy editor. And stop number 10 is to publish your book. By the way, we have a great worksheet that goes along with this video. We'll put the link to download that worksheet in the description. The first stop to a finished book is to write a one-sentence premise. When you're writing a book, it's really tempting to just jump into the writing, but you're going to save yourself a lot of time and create a better book by the end if you craft a solid premise before you start writing. Now, we've done other videos about how to write a premise. We'll put the link to that in the description and also right up there. But if you're writing fiction, your premise needs to contain 3 things, compacted down to just one sentence. First, you have a character, then you have a goal, and finally, you have a situation or crisis or an antagonist. Now, if you're writing nonfiction, you're going to have these 3 things: a problem, a person or a group, someone who experienced that problem or solved that problem, and then finally a solution. And if you want to learn more about how to write a premise, again, we have a video on how to write a premise. We'll put the link to that in the description. The second stop along the way to your finished book is to picture your ideal reader. The definition of a story, according to dictionary.com, is a narrative, either true or fictitious, in prose or verse, designed to interest, amuse, or instruct the hearer or reader. And I want you to take note of those keywords: interest, amuse, instruct. When people write books solely for themselves, they tend to write books that aren't very good, selfish stories that don't instruct, amuse, or even really hold the reader's interest. But when people write books for others, especially if they write for one specific other, for example, their child, their spouse, their best friend, they tend to write books that are exciting, that are life-changing, that are paradigm-shifting. The best books are not about how the author feels. The best books are about how the reader feels. So take J.R.R. Tolkien, for example. He wrote a book called The Hobbit. You might have heard of it before. And he honestly never thought anyone would be interested in it. He actually wrote it as a bedtime story for his kids. That means is that one of the best-selling books of all time was written by a guy who didn't even intend to publish it. He only wrote the book to entertain himself and his family. So before you write your first line, decide who you're going to write your book for. Tape their picture next to your writing desk or your computer screen. And every time you sit down to write, think, what would they like to read? That's going to make for a much better book, but it's also going to make for a much more fun writing process. The third step along the way to your finished book is to create a simple outline. I believe that plans are worthless, but planning is essential. So before you begin writing, plan out your book with a simple outline. Now, don't take this outline too seriously. Anything can change, and honestly, it will change throughout the writing process. But use it as a chance to think through your book from beginning to end. And you're likely going to come back to this outline again and again through the writing process. When you're creating your outline, you can use this century-old writing advice as a simple guide. In the first act, get your character up a tree. In the second act, throw stones at him. In the third act, get them down gracefully. If you want a more thorough outlining process for your novel, you can check out my book, The Right Structure. We'll have a link to that in the description. So for a nonfiction book, you can use this simple 5-part model as a guide. Part 1 is the problem. What problem is the reader facing in their lives that you're going to solve in this book? The second part is to make the problem personal. Why is this problem so hard to solve? How can you make it personal? By sharing your story or the story of your readers. The third part of a nonfiction outline is a solution story. How did you or someone discover the solution to that problem? Fourth part is to share your solution. Actually solve the problem. How many steps is it going to take to solve that problem? What keeps people from applying these solutions? And the fifth and final part is the call to action. And you want to encourage readers to actually take action to solve their problem. The fourth stop along the way to a finished book is to write one piece of your book at a time until your first draft is complete. And here it helps to start with a deadline. I will finish my book by insert a date. Maybe it's 3 months from now, maybe it's 100 days from now, but figure out when you're going to finish your book by, and also figure out how many words you're going to write. How many words every week are you going to write? Having a deadline will be really helpful. Then create some consequences. For example, if I don't finish my book by my deadline, or if I don't hit my weekly milestones, then this bad thing will happen. Having a consequence is really effective to keep you on your deadlines. Next, set an intention. For example, I will write 1,000 words per day in the morning in my office. And then you have to do the hard part. You have to actually do it. Drag yourself to your chair every day and write. There's no getting around the fact that writing a book is hard. It is here where most people quit. This is where you most need to picture your ideal reader and get an accountability group, usually made of other writers who can keep you focused on your goal. The fifth stop along the way to your finished book is to read through your entire book without editing. After you finish your first draft, you need to read your manuscript without editing. And here's why. After writing, you are way too close to have any objectivity about your book. So don't waste time editing your book line by line when you'll likely have to rewrite or even throw away major sections of it. Instead, you want to get a fresh perspective and see what holes need filling, what chapters need to be rewritten, what sections need to be thrown out completely. And you get that perspective by reading your book from start to finish. While you shouldn't edit as you read, it is a great idea to take notes or write down any ideas that you have for the next part of the process. The sixth stop along the way to your finished book is to rewrite your book until you finish your second draft. And remember, the second draft is meant for major structural fixes. If you find any major holes in the reading stage, your second draft is the time to write or rewrite chapters and scenes. So for the novelists, this is a great time to map out your story arc, to make sure each of the elements of a plot are present in your story, to flesh out your subplot. We have a lot of information on how to actually do that in my book, The Right Structure. For nonfiction writers, where are the logic gaps? Are your solution steps in the correct order? What principles need to be filled in with more stories. The seventh stop along the way to your finished book is to work with a content editor and critique groups. After you finish your second draft, it's time to hire an editor to critique your book, giving you a high-level overview of your book's major problems. If you're part of a critique group, this is also a great time to begin sharing your writing with them. And if you're not part of a critique group, you should join one. We have one at the Right Practice. It's called the Right Practice Pro. We'll tell you more about it in the description. I wouldn't share your writing with other people until you get to this stage. It's really not ready, and you'll just get focused on the editing process when you need to be writing. Save getting feedback for after you finish at least your first draft and usually your second draft. But once you finish your second draft, it's a great time to start getting feedback and making your writing better. I think all of us need feedback on our writing. I need feedback. Stephen King needs feedback. You do too. And now is the time to go out and get it. The eighth step along the way to a finished book is to rewrite your book until you finish the third draft. Now that you've made the major structural changes and you've started to get feedback on your writing, it's time to polish your prose. These final detailed line edits, they don't come until your third draft. First drafts are for digging the book's foundation, for exploring your story and what you want to do with your writing. Second drafts are for framing the house, for getting the major structural elements into your book. Third drafts are for finish work. Now is the time to get polishing, to make sure every sentence is really working, to make sure everything in your book is reading really well. The ninth stop along the way to your finished book is to get beta readers, to get a copy editor, to get proofreaders. Now it's time to start getting feedback from readers. And here I would ask up to 30 friends, family members, and fellow writers to read your book and give you their feedback. Beta readers bring fresh eyes. By listening to them as they talk about your book, you're going to be able to see what in your book is ready for publication and what isn't just yet. Some people say you should just get a few people that you can trust, but I think getting as many people from as varied backgrounds as possible is so much better. And here's why. You're going to have a better sense of what's working and what isn't working on your book, and really feel less personally stung if one person doesn't like it, if you have a larger sample size. If you have a wider survey than a narrower one, you're going to get a clearer picture about what's actually happening in your book. We have a full guide on the beta reader process at The Right Practice. We'll post a link to that in the description. By the way, if you're thinking about self-publishing, now is the time to hire a line editor or a copy editor to get a proofreader who can go through your prose with a fine-tooth comb. Not only are you going to have a better book because of that, good editing is really the best way to learn the writing craft. So if you're self-publishing especially, now is the time to get a proofreader. And the 10th and final step to your finished book is to publish. This is a chance to celebrate. You finished your book. And regardless of whether you self-publish or traditionally publish, you've done something most people can only dream about. I think publishing is the most exciting and stressful part of the book writing process, but it's way too big of a subject to go through in this video, so we'll have to talk about that at another day. But congratulations, if you got to this point, you've accomplished something really amazing. And now it's the time to go work on your next book. Now, by the way, if you need help along the way to finishing your book and getting published, we have a program at The Right Practice. It's called 1 Year to Publish. You can learn more about it and apply in the link in the description. That's it for me. Good luck and happy writing.